Yes.
That's really a crude drawing,
That's,
obviously, but something along those lines.
Yeah, I think that'll be helpful.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Yeah,
Is
it's included in there. I missed that the first time.
Yeah, that's why we're doing the research. That's helpful to understand that. So the way they've characterized this in the headline is the first monotherapy to demonstrate an OS benefit. And earlier they described it on page 1. Sorry. Try that again. First and only immunotherapy.
Right.
Page 5 says first monotherapy. Which term is more compelling to you?
I think if it's an immunotherapy, I would go with immunotherapy here also. But like I said, when I saw the AEs, it didn't align with immunotherapy. So I'm wondering what's the mechanism. That's okay. So that's if anything is missing, perhaps the mechanism.
Okay, got it. And the headline also says it's the first to demonstrate an OS benefit. Other alternatives could be OS data, survival benefit, increased survival rate, several different options. What would your preference be? Is it the way it's written as OS benefit, or be one of those alternatives?
Yes, no, this would be my preference. The first to demonstrate OS benefit, I think that's much more compelling than any of the other terms.
Got it. I want to show you an alternative to this slide. So they've got, the original headline, Product X reduced the risk of death by 32%, and then some alternatives are over here. You see alternatives A, B, and C. Which is the best way to characterize the survival benefit here? Is it the original reduced risk of death by 32%, or is it one of these other alternatives?
Nah, I think I'll still go with the original. I think that made it a lot more clear to me. It gave me the hazard ratio, even though the hazard ratio is not shown anywhere on the graph. So I think I'll go with the original.
This one, okay. Should they include the hazard ratio?
Not necessarily. No, if you say that they reduce the risk of death by 32%, that gives me the hazard ratio.
Yeah, you're doing the math in the background. Okay, very good. Other than adding the median lines to the Kaplan-Meier curve, any other suggestions for improvement on this slide?
No, that I can think of.
Got it. Okay, very good. Here is page 6. What's your main takeaway from this one?
Yeah, headline is clear. On the bottom, I was a little. We do know that PD-L1 positive patients do better, so that kind of is confirmed or clarified on the middle section there, middle box. And on the last box, also the prior bevacizumab, even though both those patients benefited, the benefit is a little bit different, whether the patients were treated with bevacizumab or not previously, and I think that's why I was questioning why only 50%. Maybe because it was ex-US. I'm not sure if the use of bevacizumab is much higher in the US as compared to outside of the US. I believe that could be one of the reasons, but that's speculation.
I think that's fair. Out of curiosity, on this slide, the top box shows hazard ratios for the population, and then the subpopulations by squamous versus adeno or adenosquamous. And then the other boxes, one shows median OS difference, and the other shows hazard ratio. Which way is the best way, in your opinion, to show the difference? Is it using a hazard ratio, or is it using the median values like you see in that middle box?
That's a good question. I don't think it really matters that much. I think if you're going with the hazard ratio, then stick with the hazard ratio. So in the original, the previous slide on the graph with the OS, so either or would be fine. If you just say a hazard ratio of 0.68, which would It can make me calculate the risk reduction of the death reduction. So either or would be fine. I wouldn't put both. Like I mentioned, when you asked me if I would include hazard ratio, I said no, because there is no point of including both of them. Here, I think going with either one is fine. Now, if you change the boxes totally, and you're talking about different things. So in the middle box, you're talking about the PDL1 positive versus negative. In the bottom box, or the first one, you're talking about the histology. The bottom one, you're talking mainly about the prior bevacizumab or not. So I think I don't think it matters that much because you're talking about different things. But if I don't know what other physicians would like to see, but I think I'm okay with the way it is. I don't really care much.
Yeah. If you were designing this page, would you use the hazard ratio or would you use the median data?
I think I'll probably go with I'll probably go with the median data. So the top box, I might keep the hazard ratio, but the bottom two boxes, I might go with the median data, number of months, perhaps.
Why different metrics for different subpopulations?
So we do know, again, the hazard ratio of the total population of 0.68. So teasing out by squamous versus non-squamous, I think gives me a little bit more insight. Obviously, squamous cell not expected to do quite as well, which is understandable. And well, I mean, I said I'll go with hazard ratio for that one, but I would want to see the number of months, and if the difference is obvious, I think I might use that too with that metric rather than the hazard ratio. So I think it just depends on the number per se. I mean, obviously, I cannot translate that into number of months.
Right.
You
know the base. Yeah.
But I would like to kind of know that and then make a decision which one might go well.
Got it. So out of curiosity, in some other research I've seen, for example, PDL1 plus 14 months versus 9.4 months, and then parentheses hazard ratio equals 0.62 or whatever it actually is. So then you end up having both pieces. Is that helpful or is that too much information?
I think that would be better.
Okay.
So keeping it that way for all these boxes, I think that will give me much more information, and that will be, I think, very meaningful for my own understanding. Whether I'll remember or not in the real world, I don't know how far it will go.
There won't be a quiz after, right?
But at least it will give me a lot more insight when I'm going through it.
Got it. So in the way this is laid out right now, you've got a Kaplan-Meier curve, the overall population data on one page, and then subpopulation data on another page. Another alternative to that would be to combine this into a single page. You still have the population data, overall population, the Kaplan-Meier curve, but then just call outs at the bottom, improved OS regardless of histology, demonstrated efficacy regardless of PD-L1 expression, and the scene regardless of prior bevacizumab treatment. So it doesn't have numbers, it just has the sort of the headlines.
Yeah.
Which do you prefer?
Yeah, if you were to choose one of these two, then I'll go with the alternate, because it doesn't, again, it shows that it's beneficial to all these patients regardless. But if you want to put it on two different slides, then I'll go with the more information and putting the number of months as well as hazard ratio both together. Does it make sense, what I'm saying?
It does. Again, in spirit of being complete but also concise, is the alternate sufficient for telling the story of product X, or do you need to have those two different slides to tell the story?
So if you want to put it on one slide, the alternate is fine. The alternate would suffice. Now, if someone wants to know a little bit more about it, because like I said, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know how much of those numbers will I remember. So if you put it on one slide stating that regardless of the PDL1, regardless of histology, regardless of prior bevacizumab use, all these patients beneficial, I think that's what I'll take home with me. And like I said, that makes me more compelled to use it as a standard of care in the second line, like I was saying earlier. So I think that if you want to use just one slide, that would suffice, the one on the right or the alternate one.
Got it. Okay. Very good. Moving along then. So this is the next slide or page in the sequence. What's your main takeaway from this page?
Maybe the PFS. Now, if we have the OS, whether this is absolutely necessary, I think this is kind of good to have, not absolutely needed though.
And that was one of my questions. Given they've already met the primary endpoint, demonstrated the OS benefit, do they even need to include the PFS slide or page in the presentation?
No, I don't think so. I mean, like I said, it's good to have. If someone has a question about PFS, at least we have this. But I don't think it's, in my mind, it's absolutely needed.
Got it. Okay. Then page 8. What's your main takeaway from this page?
Yes, I would like to see this. This is the response rates. Again, as clearly shows that it's nearly doubling the response rates. Again, in my mind, I might be thinking of the disease control rate, and I'm not sure if that's different between the two arms, but at least knowing that the overall response rates with PR or better is twice or more than twice of the chemotherapy arm, I think that's meaningful.
Got it. On this slide, they say more than double the overall response rate. They don't ever say objective response defined as partial response or better, or partial response plus complete response. Do they need to do that? Kind of getting back to the point you raised earlier about what you thought of as response rates in clinical practice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. When you look at the clinical trial data, you kind of know what the endpoint is and what they're talking about. So again, even though when I think about response rates, I do think about more like disease control rate, not really response rate. But still, I think when you look at the trial data, you know what they're talking about.
Got it. Okay, very good. There's a statement here too. It says the first immunotherapy to demonstrate response in PD-L1 negative patients, the black box down towards the bottom. What's the significance of that?
So as we know, I think that if this agent is beneficial for, regardless of PD-L1 testing, I think that's what it is. Now, I don't know if they teased out the response rates and separated them out in PD-L1 positive or negative patients. I didn't see that. I mean, we did see the improvement in the survival with PD-L1 positive or negative patients, but I don't see here that they, in the, below that, is it true? Well, I see, okay. So they did, 9% versus 12%.
Right.
Okay. I didn't see that the first time. Well, I mean, I don't know if that's really that important. The one way to show that perhaps is to add just the bar graph on the original slide and state that this is for PD-L1 negative patients.
So similar to like the duration response graph right above that, the bar graph showing response rate? Or
Yeah,
I guess similar to
the
you're thinking more like the column chart at the top of the page?
Yeah.
But show that for PD-L1. Okay, got it. I'm just going to make a note for myself. Okay, so basically display the data the same way.
Right, because otherwise, I didn't really catch that, so you can miss that information.
Okay, that's very helpful. Very good. Anything that doesn't need to be on this page in the spirit of making it more streamlined?
So I'm not sure if you really want to talk about the PD-L1 negative patients and the response rates in those patients, because these are not great numbers. And improvement from 9% to 10% to 12%, I'm not sure how meaningful that is. It's better, but I'm not sure if the company would really want to focus on that. I mean, it's just just stating that on the previous slide that regardless of the PD-L1, those patients did have OS benefit, and just leave it at that maybe. I don't know.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. A few more slides or pages to take a look at. Main takeaway from this page.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I'm not sure about the AEs, and it appears to be a little bit different than the IO, so I would like to understand the mechanism and see why still quite a bit of anemia and UTI, whether it was treatment related or just something else.
Got it. Okay. Anything else? Any other suggestions on this page?
No, not I can think of.
Very good. Now, what's your main takeaway on this page?
This is, as the headline suggests, it's pretty straightforward, very easy to understand, simple information. And on the bottom, again, reminding that no PD-L1 testing is required. So I think that's fine. It's clear.
Got it. Anything to add here?
No, not I can think of.
Right. And then the last page, the summary page.
Yeah,
What's
so
your
I
main
think good
takeaway
summary.
here?
Good summary, I would think. Here also it reminds us efficacy regardless of PD-L1 histology or treatment history, and reminder on the response rates as well. So I think that's suffices as far as summary is concerned. It doesn't include the PFS, and I don't think that it needs to be included either.
Okay, got it. Is there anything else that you would include in this one-page summary of the case for Product X in advanced cervical cancer?
Perhaps the line of treatment in the headline. It does actually. Okay, in the below the bolded part, it does. Okay, progression on or after chemotherapy. So no, nothing else to add then.
Would you add something? I just typed in the second line here. Would you add something like that on the screen after chemotherapy?
Yeah, so if you want to include in the second line there where you typed in, then you don't need the second statement.
Got it. Okay. Which approach is better? The way it's originally written with the sort of the subhead, or incorporate the... Go ahead.
Incorporating the line in the original headline would make it, again, I would say shorter and precise and concise. And at the same time, it gives me as much information as the second statement.
Okay. One other thing that you brought up during the discussion is this idea of does not require PD-L1 testing. And that was on the, to be fair, that was on the dosing and administration page right before this. Does that need to be on the summary slide too?
So I think the middle box, I would like to keep it there because it doesn't just limit to PD-L1 testing. I think it also reminds me about the histology or the treatment history like we saw before. So yes, I would like to keep it there.
Right. But do they need to explicitly state, I'll put on the screen, no PD-L1 testing required?
No, not on
part
this.
Of the summary?
Not on this slide. I don't think so.
Okay. Very good. Last question on this one. The very bottom box says Product X has been FDA approved and NCCN recommended 3 other tumor types. What's the significance of including this statement on this slide about Product X in cervical cancer?
Yeah, I think somewhat helpful if I'm already familiar with the agent. I've used it in other indications. I know what to expect with it. It makes it easier to extend it used in other approvals.
Got it. Okay. And to wrap up, I'll give you a scenario here. Imagine you're in your practice, you see one of your peers, and you start walking together. You're walking to the elevator, but you know he's going to get in the elevator, you're not. You got 30 seconds in the hallway to tell him what you learned about Product X. what do you tell him about what you learned today?
So just say, hey, I learned about a new product which might be approved in the second-line cervical cancer patients who have progressed following first-line platinum-based treatment. It's a immunotherapy drug, no PD-L1 testing required, no MSI testing required. It shows to be having much better efficacy compared to chemotherapy. I think it has the potential to become a new standard of care for second-line cervical cancer.
Excellent. Very good. So with all that in mind, let's assume that Product X gets the FDA approval, as we've described today, second line following chemotherapy for any patient. How do you see it fitting into your clinical practice, knowing that you already have an immune checkpoint inhibitor that you use in the second line for patients who do have a MSI high or are PD-L1 positive?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, I just not, if this product is approved, I don't think that I'll be testing for PD-L1 or MSI. And I think I'll be considering using this instead.
Instead of pembrolizumab?
Yeah, assuming there is no logistical issue.
Got it. Okay, very good. Doctor, I've used my full allotted hour with you. I very much appreciate your time and your willingness to start a little bit early this morning. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I appreciate you participating.
All right, you too. Take care.
All right.